Combine finished the company's hybrid plot first. Clean rows, perfect ears. Exactly what the brochure promised. The operator didn't even look down. He didn't need to. The machine moved steady, cutting through stalks that all stood the same height, the same color, the same timing. This was the kind of field seed companies photographed. Predictable, reliable, proven. The way wagon filled. The number was written down. No one reacted, because that number was expected. Then the combine turned, deliberately lining up with the second plot, the old man's corn. You could see the difference from the grandstand. The rows weren't perfect. The plants didn't match. Some stalks stood taller, others shorter. The color shifted across the field. It looked uneven, like something grown, not designed, like something that didn't belong in 1980. The operator dropped the header. The machine moved forward. After 20 yards, he eased off the throttle. Not because something broke, because the numbers coming into the way wagon didn't make sense. 6 months earlier, no one expected that. Not in Marshall County, not in the summer of 1980. By then, hybrid corn wasn't new. It was standard. Every serious farmer planted it. Every co-op recommended it. Every salesman pushed it. Because the data backed it up. Higher yields, better uniformity, stronger disease resistance, and most important of all, predictability. The company behind it was Prairie Ridge Genetics, based out of Topeka. By 1980, they dominated 3 counties in northeast Kansas. Their flagship hybrid, PRG 404, was planted on nearly every acre that mattered. It had been tested for 8 years, refined, optimized, engineered to perform. And in a normal year, it did. The man selling it was Carl Whitaker, 41 years old, agronomy degree from Kansas State, clean boots, pressed shirt, and the kind of confidence that comes from never being proven wrong. Carl didn't just sell seed, he sold certainty. He carried charts in his truck, side-by-side trials, university data, yield projections adjusted for rainfall. He could tell you, within 2 bushels, what your field would produce before you even planted it. And for most farmers, that was enough, except for one. His name was Anton Vacek, 73 years old, farming the same 160 acres his family had worked since 1902. Dryland ground, wind-cut soil, the kind that doesn't forgive mistakes. Anton didn't buy seed. He never had. Every fall he walked his field and selected his own, by hand, the way his father had done, the way his grandfather had done. He didn't explain it, didn't defend it. He just kept doing it. Every spring, Carl Whitaker drove out to that same farm, parked in the same dirt lane, and had the same conversation. "You're leaving yield in the field." Anton would nod once. "My field does fine." "Fine isn't the point," Carl would say. "Better is." Anton never argued, never raised his voice, just planted his seed. The problem wasn't that Anton refused to switch. The problem was where his land sat. Right off Highway 77. Every farmer in the county drove past it twice a week, and every summer they saw it. The uneven rows, the inconsistent height, the color that didn't match the deep green fields next door. Some laughed, some shook their heads, some called it stubborn, some called it pride. Carl Whitaker called it something else, visibility. Because as long as that field stayed there, where everyone could see it, people would ask questions, and those were questions Carl didn't like. So in February of 1980, at a county meeting most people barely remembered, Carl made a decision. He stood up, set his notes on the table, and made an offer no seed company in Kansas had ever made before. A public yield contest, side by side, same soil, same planting date, same fertilizer. Prairie Ridge Genetics versus anyone who thought they could beat them. Winner takes $25,000. Company money. Cash. No entry fee. No risk. Just results. The room went quiet, because everyone understood what that meant. This wasn't a promotion. This was a statement. The answer had already been decided, and anyone still questioning it was about to be proven wrong. Carl didn't say Anton's name. He didn't need to. Everyone already knew. What Carl didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that the year they chose to prove certainty was the year the rain would stop. And in Kansas, the year the rain stops is the only year that matters. The seed Anton planted in 1980 was older than the company he was competing against, older than the hybrid program, older than the data, older than every chart Carl Whitaker carried in his truck. It didn't come from a laboratory. It came from a field, and it had been coming from that field for a very long time. Anton Vacek didn't remember when the seed first arrived. He only knew it was already there when he was a boy. His father called it the Czech corn. Not a brand, not a variety number, just a name that pointed backward instead of forward. It came from Europe, sometime before 1902, carried across the ocean in a cloth bag along with tools, clothes, and whatever a man thought was worth saving when he left everything else behind. That seed had been planted in Kansas soil for nearly 80 years, not tested, not optimized, not improved in a laboratory, but it had been selected every year by hand. Every October, after harvest, Anton walked his fields alone. He didn't go to the grain bin. He didn't take seed from what was already harvested. He walked the standing stalks, slowly, looking, not for the biggest ear, not for the prettiest plant, but for the right ones. The stalk that held through wind, the plant that didn't break in heat, the ear that filled even when the rain came late. He'd pull the husk back just enough to see the kernels, run his thumb across them, feel the density, the spacing, the strength. If it passed, he marked it. Then he kept walking. He selected around 200 ears every year, not from one spot, from the entire field, spread out. Because Anton understood something no brochure ever mentioned. You don't build strength by choosing one perfect plant. You build it by choosing many good ones and letting them remain different. Back at the barn, he dried them the old way. Air, time. No heat, no shortcuts. 6 weeks on wooden racks. Then he shelled them by hand. Not all of it, only the middle of each ear. He threw away the tip, threw away the butt, kept only the kernels that formed under the most stable conditions, consistent, balanced, reliable. Those kernels went into cloth bags, the same kind his father had used. Each bag marked with a year, sometimes with a note. Dry summer, late rain, strong stand. He had been writing those notes for decades. This wasn't tradition. This was breeding, slow, patient breeding, done one season at a time, in the same field, under the same sky, for nearly 50 years. Carl Whitaker didn't see it that way. To him, Anton's seed was outdated, uncontrolled, primitive, a genetic mess compared to the clean lines of a hybrid. He had said it more than once. "You're planting history," Carl told him one spring. Anton had shrugged. "History grows just fine." Carl didn't laugh that time, because he didn't know how to argue with something that didn't try to argue back. The difference between them wasn't knowledge. Carl had more data than Anton ever would, more trials, more numbers, more research. But Carl's knowledge came from outside the field. Anton's came from inside it. Carl could tell you what corn should do. Anton knew what his corn actually did. There was something else Carl didn't understand, something he wasn't trained to see. A hybrid is built for consistency. Every plant the same, every ear the same, every response the same. That's its strength. But it's also its weakness, because when every plant is the same, they all fail the same way, at the same time. Anton's corn wasn't like that. No two plants were identical. Some grew taller, some stayed shorter, some matured earlier, some held on longer. It looked messy, uncontrolled, imperfect, but it was alive in a way the hybrid wasn't, because it could change without changing, adapt without being redesigned, survive without being corrected. By the time spring of 1980 arrived, Anton had already made his decision. He would plant his seed the same way he always had. He didn't adjust for the contest, didn't try to optimize anything, didn't treat it differently, because to him, the test wasn't about proving something, it was about seeing something, something he had been watching for years. When the fair board marked out the test plots, Anton showed up with one thing, a cloth bag, faded, soft from decades of use. It didn't look like much. Compared to the treated, polished hybrid seed laid out beside it, one looked like a product, the other looked like memory. Carl stood there watching as the planter was loaded. 2 plots, same soil, same depth, same spacing, same fertilizer. Everything controlled, everything equal, everything fair. Exactly the way Carl wanted it. Because in Carl's mind, once you removed every variable, only one thing would be left, the better seed. And he was absolutely certain which one that would be. The corn came up in late May. At first there was no difference. 2 plots of green pushing through the same Iowa soil, under the same sky, planted on the same day. If you stood at the edge of the field in the first week, you wouldn't have known which was which. Carl Whitaker did, and he waited. By mid-June, the difference appeared. It always did. The Heartland hybrid rose faster, straighter rows, even spacing. Every plant nearly identical in height and color. A clean field. The kind of field that looks like control. Anton's plot didn't look like that. The rows weren't perfect. The plants didn't match. Some were taller. Some lagged behind. The leaves weren't the same shade of green. It looked uneven, like something unfinished. Farmers driving past slowed down. They didn't need signs to tell them which was which. That one's the hybrid. And that one, someone said, shaking his head, that's old corn. They said it quietly, not mocking, not impressed either, just certain. Carl stood at the edge of the plots one morning in June with 2 other salesmen from Cedar Falls. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. He pointed once. That's what modern breeding looks like. Clean, uniform, efficient. Then he glanced at Anton's side. And that's what happens when you don't move forward. By July, the heat arrived. Not extreme, not yet. Just enough to start asking questions of the soil. Rainfall dropped below normal. Not a drought, not officially, but the ground began to tighten. Moisture stopped sitting near the surface. Roots had to go deeper to find it. The hybrid responded first, not dramatically, just small signs. Leaves began to curl by mid-morning, not all at once, but close enough. Because every plant was the same, every root system the same depth, every response triggered at the same threshold. When the soil moisture dipped below that line, the entire field reacted together. Anton's field didn't react together. It never did. Some plants curled early. Some didn't curl at all. Some slowed down. Some kept growing. From a distance, it looked inconsistent. From the road, it looked worse. But if you stood inside it, it felt different. because the field wasn't acting like a single crop. It was acting like a population, a mix of responses, a mix of tolerances, a mix of strengths and weaknesses spread across the same ground. Carl noticed it. He didn't like what he was seeing, but he didn't say it out loud. Not yet. Because on paper, the hybrid still had the advantage. It always did. Better genetics, better yield history, better performance in trials. 7 years of data against one old farmer and a cloth bag. Then the rain stopped. Not completely, but enough. Enough to matter. Late July is when corn decides what it's going to be. That's when pollination happens. That's when the plant turns stress into loss, or turns stability into yield. The hybrid entered pollination under pressure, every plant reaching the same stage at the same time, every tassel emerging together, every silk trying to catch pollen in the same narrow window. It looked perfect until it wasn't. Because the timing was too tight. The stress delayed silk emergence just enough. The pollen dropped before some silks were ready. Missed connections, empty spaces on the ear, kernels that should have formed didn't. And because every plant was synchronized, they all missed in the same way. Anton's field didn't move together. Some plants tasseled early, some later. Some silks appeared right on time, some late enough to catch the second wave of pollen. The window stretched, not clean, not efficient, but wide. That width mattered, because even when some plants failed, others succeeded, and the field didn't collapse all at once. It absorbed the stress, shifted, adjusted. This is what no one at the co-op talked about, what no brochure explained, what no yield chart could show. A hybrid is optimized for the best conditions. An open population is prepared for the worst. By the first week of August, the difference was no longer cosmetic. It was structural. Carl walked the plots himself. No audience, no sales pitch, no clipboard. Just him and the corn. He pulled back husks, checked ear fill, counted rows. The hybrid ears looked clean, but incomplete. Uniform rows, with gaps. The same gap, again and again. Anton's ears were different. Some were full, some weren't. Some strong, some weak. But when Carl counted them, the average told a story he didn't want to believe. He stood there longer than he meant to, ran the numbers in his head, adjusted for moisture, adjusted for density, tried to find the mistake. There wasn't one. For the first time since February, Carl Whitaker stopped being certain. He didn't say it out loud, didn't go back to Cedar Falls and report it, didn't warn anyone, because the contest wasn't over, and data said he would still win. But standing in that field, looking at ears that didn't match the model, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not doubt, not yet, but something close to it. Anton had already seen it. He'd seen it in the silk, in the staggered timing, in the way the field didn't panic. He didn't count bushels. He didn't calculate yield. He didn't need to. He just walked the rows, put his hand on the plants, and nodded once, the way a man nods when something is unfolding exactly the way he expected. By the second week of August, everyone knew something was wrong. They just didn't agree on what. From the road, the hybrid still looked better, cleaner, taller, more uniform. If you drove past at 50 miles an hour, you'd pick it every time. That's what most people saw. That's what most people trusted. But up close, the story was changing. Word had started to spread, quiet at first. A few farmers talking at the co-op, someone mentioning earfill, someone else saying the timing looked off. Nobody said it loud, not yet. Because Heartland didn't lose, not publicly, not with $25,000 on the line. Carl Whitaker didn't return to the plots that week. He didn't need to. He had already seen enough. But he also had something else. 7 years of data. 7 years that said the hybrid would win. Data is powerful, especially when it's been right for a long time. It makes doubt feel like a mistake. So Carl did what people do when reality doesn't match expectation. He trusted the data and waited. Anton didn't wait. He worked. Every morning just after sunrise, he walked the test plot. Not to check numbers, not to measure anything, just to observe. He touched the ears, pressed the kernels, listened to the plants the way he had for decades. He wasn't comparing his corn to the hybrid. He was comparing it to memory, to every year that had gone wrong before, every dry season, every late rain, every time the field had been tested. And this year felt familiar. Not good, not easy, but survivable. That was the difference. The hybrid needed a good year to show its strength. Anton's corn only needed a bad year, not to fail. By the time the county fair opened, the tension was already there. August 1980, Bremer County Fairgrounds. People came for the rides, for the food, for the livestock shows, but they stayed for one thing, the yield contest. 500 people by Saturday morning. Farmers, dealers, families, men who had been planting hybrid corn for 20 years, men who had never seen an open pollinated field win anything. They stood along the fence line, pointing, talking, waiting. Carl stood near the Heartland booth, company shirt, clipboard in hand, still composed, still professional, but quieter than before. Anton stood on the opposite side, same overalls, same cap, same cloth bag in his hands. He didn't talk to anyone, didn't explain anything, didn't try to convince anyone. He had already made his argument. It was standing in the field. At 9:30, the extension agent arrived, Dale Curtis, neutral, precise, the kind of man nobody argued with. The combine rolled in, calibrated, checked, ready. Plot A first, the hybrid. The machine moved steady through the rows, clean cut, grain flowing into the weigh wagon, dust rising behind it. 20 minutes, that's all it took. Dale recorded the weight, checked moisture, adjusted the number, wrote it down, didn't say a word. Then he moved to plot B, Anton's corn. The same machine, the same speed, the same process. No advantage, no excuse. But the field didn't move the same. The ears weren't uniform. The plants didn't feed into the combine like a system. They fed into it like a collection. Strong ones, weak ones, all together. Another 20 minutes, another number. Dale wrote it down, put both cards in his pocket, and walked toward the grandstand. 500 people went quiet, not slowly, all at once, because this wasn't theory anymore. This was proof. Carl felt it before the number was read, that moment when you already know, but you're still hoping to be wrong. Anton didn't move, didn't shift his weight, didn't tighten his grip on the bag. He just stood there, waiting, the same way he had waited through every season before. Because in his world, results didn't come when you wanted them. They came when they were ready. And now, they were ready. Dale Curtis stepped onto the stage, a small card in his hand. Nothing dramatic, no speech, no build-up, just numbers. Ladies and gentlemen, the results of the 1980 Bremer County Yield Contest. You could feel it. 500 people holding their breath at the same time. Plot A, Heartland HS 880 Hybrid, 91 bushels per acre. A murmur. Not disappointment, not surprise, just recognition. 91 was decent. In a dry year, it was acceptable, respectable. Carl exhaled, just a little. It might be enough. Dale looked down at the second card. Plot B, Stump Open Pollinated Dent, 103 bushels per acre. The sound hit all at once. 500 people on their feet. Not polite applause, not quiet approval. A roar. Because they hadn't just seen a farmer win, they had seen something break. An assumption, a certainty, a system everyone believed couldn't fail. 12 bushels. That was the difference. 12 bushels per acre. On half an acre, it was a number. On a real farm, it was everything. On Anton's 200 acres, that was 2,400 bushels. At $2.50 a bushel, that was $6,000. The exact number Carl had used for 6 years. The exact number he said Anton was losing. But the math had flipped. It wasn't Anton leaving money in the field. It was the hybrid. Carl didn't move. His clipboard hung at his side, his eyes fixed somewhere between the stage and the field. He wasn't angry, not yet. He was recalculating, trying to make the numbers make sense, trying to find the condition that would explain it. There wasn't one, because the result wasn't an accident. It was a different system. Anton didn't celebrate. No raised hands, no smile, no speech. He stood there with the cloth bag against his chest and nodded once, the way a man nods when something he already understood finally becomes visible to everyone else. The check was delivered 3 days later, $25,000, company money. No argument, no delay. Carl brought it himself. He stood in Anton's kitchen, the same place he had stood every spring for 6 years, trying to sell him something. Now he wasn't selling anything. He handed over the envelope. I still think, in a normal year... Carl stopped, didn't finish the sentence. Anton looked at him, calm, steady. In a normal year, Anton said quietly, your hybrid probably wins. Carl nodded, relieved to hear it. Then why enter? He asked. Anton set the envelope on the table, didn't open it. Because farming isn't about the best year. It's about the worst one. Carl didn't speak. Anton continued. Your corn is built to succeed when everything goes right. Same plant, same timing, same response. That's strength, until something goes wrong. And when it does, everything fails together. He tapped the cloth bag lightly. My corn doesn't fail together. Some plants break, some survive, but the field keeps going. Carl looked at the bag, really looked at it, for the first time. Not as something old, not as something outdated, but as something he didn't fully understand. What are you going to do with the money? He asked. Anton answered without hesitation. Save more seed. He built the seed bank that winter. Insulated walls, controlled temperature, wooden racks filled with cloth bags. Not just his own corn, dozens of varieties, collected over years, exchanged, preserved, grown, each one different, each one carrying something no hybrid could promise: variation, resilience, insurance. Every seed in this building, Anton told the extension agent later, is protection against something we haven't seen yet. You can't buy that. You have to grow it. Carl left Heartland 2 years later, not because of the contest, because of what he learned after it. That one system, no matter how efficient, is still a risk, and 100% of anything is never a strategy. Anton kept farming, kept selecting, kept saving, the same way his father had, the same way his grandfather had, one field, one season at a time. The cloth bag still exists. It sits in a glass case now, at the county museum, faded, worn, unimpressive to anyone who doesn't know what it holds. But inside that bag was 100 years of decisions, and one drought year that proved all of them mattered, because the hybrid was built for the best year. The old corn was built for the worst. And in farming, the worst year is the one that decides everything.